With offices in Radford and Blacksburg, Patrick K. Moore is a client-focused, community-involved law firm committed to you. If a legal issue touches your family, finances, or future, we can help. Whether it's real estate, business law, or estate planning, Patrick Moore welcomes the opportunity to speak with you about your legal issues.
Welcome, I'm Rose Martin, and we are right around the corner in Patrick County. We're in the courtroom right here with best-selling author, legal thriller writer, Martin Clark. So what's on the docket? Well, today it's the substitution order, and you know, I was raised never to look for revenge, but boy, I've got to tell you, at the end of this story, it is sweet. Martin, thanks for having us right here in the courtroom. I bet these walls could really talk.
Well, thanks for coming. Welcome to Patrick County. Good afternoon, and it's nice to have right around the corner here. The walls, if the walls could talk, they might be demanding royalties from me.
Right.
Because a lot of the stories, or at least the beginnings of my stories, start here in the courtroom.
Well, and when I was thinking about getting through the stories that I wanted to share with you, I'm thinking when we read your book, there were so many real people. There were so many real names that we could pick from. I thought, you've got a lifetime worth of literature to write with all the cases that you've dealt with in 28 years, just retired. 28
years on the bench. And one of I always use real names in my stories. And the reason I do that is because I think if you're local, if you're reading this in California or Wisconsin, it really does not matter. The name's the name. Mm-hmm. But if you're reading it locally and there is a name in the narrative and it's not real, it tends to throw you out of the story. If you see something and it says Sheriff Joe Williams, and you know Joe Williams is not the sheriff, Dan Smith is the sheriff, you stop and you say, this is fiction, it isn't real, and it's an impediment in terms of the story. And I think it's easier to invest in the story when you have real people in it, especially in a small community. Well, I loved it, and so we'll get to the book in a few minutes, but growing up, were you always fascinated with the law or watching the crime thrillers, the legal thriller shows? No one's really ever asked me that before. I went to law school because I was told that it was a degree you could use for a lot of things. In actuality, you can use it for one thing. Yeah, what would have been those other things? I'm trying to think what that would even be. Business, teaching, okay. Any number of suggestions that it's a very general diploma that you can be sort of a Renaissance man or woman if you have this degree. It doesn't seem to be true. I know I loved writing. I wrote when I was in law school. Mm-hmm. And I practiced law a year or two and applied for several teaching jobs. I wanted to teach writing or creative writing or English and was quickly turned down. The law degree didn't carry a lot of water with those folks. So much for that multiple opportunities with a law degree, right? It was one. Yeah, so it's one thing to do, and that's practice law with it. So true or false? When you were a young student, middle school age, is when reading really kicked in because of a book that you read with your friends that was maybe a little dicey? That is true. Okay. That's true. Maybe you, and that was Instant Replay. Okay. It's a sports book written by Jerry Kramer, I think, wrote Instant Replay. I want to make sure that's right. And we were just amazed because riffing on something Steve Harvey used to say in his stand-up, we discovered there were curse words in this book, and we read it, and so you had sports and profanity. We loved it. We actually went through, my friends, Eddie Burnett, Tom Burnett, and Donnie Rakes, who's the basketball coach here now, the girls' varsity basketball coach. We got this novel, or this narrative, this book, and highlighted all the curse words. Oh. There you go. So there you go. That was the book that you thought, well, if all books are like this, we're just dedicated readers. A lot of intellect went into those into that choice. How about growing up with your family? Were they any lawyers, writers? Oh yeah, my dad's was a great lawyer. He was. I like to say my father is not, or was not, the best all-around lawyer I've ever known. The person I mentioned in the book, and sort of in passing, Dave Worthy, was the best all-around lawyer I've ever known. Dave wrote good briefs. He understood the law. He liked the abstract side of things. He was charismatic and magical in a courtroom. He was the whole package. My dad was the very best courtroom lawyer in this very courtroom I have ever seen.
Wow.
He was spellbinding. He's the real deal. And he's what you would expect from Southside Virginia. A little bit flamboyant, a little bit of a showman, but underneath all that was a very, very real and genuine personality that connected with jurors.
Do you find that that's a characteristic that you used from your dad when you were behind the bench and doing the same thing with people who came through?
We're umpires, not players. So there's not a lot of room for theater, and there's not a lot of room for argument when you're the judge.
So what do you think was the main thing that you brought into adulthood from your parents growing up?
My mom was a teacher, and my mom did love to read. My father was a small-town lawyer. I'm not really sure. That's an intriguing question. The thing I would like to say is that they taught me the value of an education. Unfortunately, it's no secret that 9th or 10th grade, I didn't finish at Patrick County High School. I was in a lot of mischief and was, I like to say, exiled to Woodbury Forest School. So I'd like to say they taught me the value of education. Maybe they did. It just set in much later when I was a junior or senior.
Those seeds were planted early, so I'm sure they were right there.
And that sounds kind of trite. They taught me the value of an education, but they were great parents. And you know, my mom taught school for 30 years. My dad practiced law till he couldn't do it anymore, almost on his deathbed. And you know, I think they taught me a real sense of professionalism. They taught me if you're going to do something, to do it well.
Well, and that work ethic is evident in your book, so that doing it well and the time that you put into the research. And I read that you consider it almost like a job. You've got to get up and write, and you're very disciplined. In the morning, you like to get up at a certain time and write for a certain amount of time?
A couple things. Number one, I retired May 1. I like to say I now have one full-time job, just this one. But writing isn't a job for me. I like it. I'm frequently asked, well, how do you write a bestseller? How do you become a published author? I want to write. If you write as a means to making a living, I think you'll be a failure. You need to love doing it. And the great thing for me, I have gotten to rub shoulders with, meet, work with a lot of writers, a lot of authors I really admire, from Larry Brown to John Grisham to Lee Smith. And what you learn about every writer is that we love doing it. Some people love playing golf. Some people love music. Some people love stamp collecting. I enjoy writing. And I would have to love it because I spent 20 years accumulating rejection letters and kept writing because I really like doing it. So,
okay, 20 years. Let's stop there.
Yep.
20 years of rejection letters.
Yes.
Okay, and what about some of those rejection letters or early reviews? When did they start to go positive? Or do you have a specific example of something that was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it as a writer?
I will read for you one of my early rejection letters.
Okay.
I started writing in, and you can be my witness.
Okay.
This is the real deal.
It is the real deal.
An old manual typewriter, signed in ink. And if we hold it up to the light, you can see that it has whiteout on it. That's how old this is. Dated January 24, 1983. I was in Charlottesville then going to law school, and I knew I wanted to be a writer. And so this is 1983, and my first book, Many Aspects, I sold it in 1999, published in 2000. Gary Fiskajanic at Knopf, finally, someone took a chance on my first book. But getting there was a long, difficult, and Byzantine road, and here's the start. Dated January 24, 1983. It is from Ruth Cantor, literary agent. It begins, Dear Martin Clark, you seem to have proved that you can write wittily and amusingly about just anything and everything that enters your head what you have not, and she went to the effort in the old days to underscore not.
Yes, she did.
What you have not proved, you can write a novel. I read 5 pages and wondered if you'd ever been scared by a performing flea, read 10 more, and developed a severe case of vertigo. People just won't put up with this sort of writing anymore, and editors know it. Sincerely, Ruth Cantor.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah. So that will, you have to really enjoy what you're doing to wade through that.
But how do you get through that? You know, you're out there writing and you're pouring your heart and your soul into this, and then you're getting rejection letter after rejection letter, and then you get a stinging, comment like this. How do you keep going and say, well, I know that she's got to be absolutely wrong?
Because you like doing it, because I enjoy writing. When in 2000, when Knopf bought my first book, I was at the point of telling my agent, all I ever want to do is have it published. I just want to see it in print. I want to be able to walk into a bookstore and see my book there. And I'll give it away if somebody will just publish it. And you really do get to that point, and you never know, and I don't think anyone ever knows for sure that I have this gift, that I have a book in me, that will be published. I don't think you know that. It is a business of luck and timing. I often say that I am probably the 3rd best writer in Patrick County, but I am the luckiest. Barney Day is an amazing writer, and Regina Handy used to be our county administrator, is an amazing writer. But my agent used to tell me you need one person to begin with who likes it and publishes it. You need one person, and that keeps you going as a writer. You need that one person. Then you need about 2 or 3 people in the world of reviews and publicity who like it. And if you get those dominoes to fall, the book that I literally could not give away for almost a decade, one day the New York Times shows up and they take my picture in my backyard with the cur dog and the bare spots. And I'm off and running, and I've had a fortunate and great career ever since.
Did you want to send a signed copy to her?
Well, it's tempting.
Yeah.
It would be very cathartic, wouldn't it? But no, I'd never have done that. I will say, and I don't do this with any barb, and I don't do this with any spite. Maybe there is a 5% satisfaction factor in this. Once you get published, you think that life's good, that I'm now published, and all I need to do is wait for the good reviews to roll in. So while we're doing this, and I will read to you the best review, the best bad review I've ever gotten, and then tell you a little bit about that. This is from Bort on Books, and it was June 30th, 2000. Reviewed by Ina R. Bort in the New York Law Journal. And let me emphasize, not the New York Times. Again, luck and timing. You get this review in the New York Times, your career is over. You get a good review, as I was fortunate enough to, then your career is off and running. But this is from the New York Law Journal, Ina Bort, and I'm feeling good about myself. I'm published. Things are picking up. And here's the way it begins. This is easily the worst novel of the year 2000.
Oh, ouch.
I realize that it is only June, but if it were the 1st of January, the same prediction could as easily be made.
Oh.
And you think that's bad, it only gets worse as it goes. So every year, I've done 5 books. The Substitution Order is number 5. And every year that I publish a book, I do a handwritten note, and I send a copy of the book to Ina Bort. She's an attorney in New York. And this year I wrote, 20 years later, I'm still trying to make a fan. And that's really all I said. She, I don't think, has liked one yet.
So she still is giving you a critical review. So you haven't gotten her on board.
I'm still 0 for 5 as far as I know with Ina Bort. But your writing can't be for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, having that grit and that ability to say, I'm going to keep on writing, I think there's so many people who are really talented but kind of get deflated with something like that, right? And so they think, oh, if so-and-so doesn't like it, I must not be that great at it. So where does that come from, that push? Is it the love of the passion of believing, I just love to do this, so I'm going to keep doing it, and someone is going to read it.
It's amazing to me when I'm on the road and I do book gigs or I teach classes. It is amazing to me how many people invest 4 years, 5 years, 10 years in a manuscript, in a book, send it off, and get 1 or 2 rejections. And then quit and surrender and give up. It is a long, difficult Byzantine trip between that first written word and the published novel. And I tell people over and over, almost at every gig I do, there's a closet writer. I wasn't standing up and admitting, I don't know why it's like kind of, I guess, being an actor or you want to be an artist or a musician. You never want to really admit that. My law partner and good friend, former law partner and good friend, Chris Corbett, used to say, geez, Martin, we have run off enough copies that you already have a bestseller. You're going to bankrupt the office sending out manuscript copies to agents and editors. But you really have to have a thick skin and be persistent. And for me, again, it was part passion, part stubbornness, and part that I just like doing it. And at a certain point, you're playing with house money, right? I mean, I've been rejected, no one likes this, and now, I mean, what difference is another rejection?
Do you remember that day that the first hardback copy arrived and you opened it up and you saw your name on the cover?
Oh, yeah,
and it was
yeah.
like,
It was in Roanoke. It was in
Yeah.
Roanoke. Adriana, we were talking earlier, Trajani and I opened for Frank McCourt, and the box came in, and they opened them up, and there they were. And it's just amazing.
Yeah,
It
talk about moment.
It's just a rush. It's the best.
What about the process? What's your favorite part of the process?
I love writing. I like doing plot. The new book, The Substitution Order, is a little different for me. I wrote it in the first person. I've never done that before. Most of my books are very plot driven and maybe short shrift to character development. This book, I had the plot, as I always do, in my mind from alpha to omega when I started.
Oh, you do? So you
Yeah.
know the beginning, the
Oh,
middle,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
You've got it ready to go.
I do.
So let's talk about the substitution order. And boy, Kevin had a bit of a hard luck part of the story, right? He's got this amazing life, and he's a successful attorney, and then he kind of goes off and gets sidetracked.
90 days. He has a bad 90 days, and at one point he says 99.94 or whatever percent of my life is on the good side of the ledger. I have a few days on the bad side, and look where I am, ruined. And it was interesting, you mentioned this courtroom and the walls, and I said maybe I should pay royalties to the county or to the courtroom, because the genesis for Kevin's story came in here. Several years ago, I did a jury trial, and we had a defendant in a horrible sexual abuse case. He pled not guilty before a Patrick County jury. And he, the Commonwealth's case was a perfect laydown. It seemed to me to be flawless. And part of their case was the defendant on tape confessing in detail. His voice confessing. I waited to see what he was going to say. He took the stand, the defendant, and testified and admitted that was his voice, admitted that he had confessed on tape, and was then asked by his very able lawyer, well, why did you do that? And this was his response. He said, I love, and he named the victim, I love him, and he's my family. And I understood that he had spoken with the police and given them this account, told them that I had done these things. And I believed that if I did not accept responsibility and confess, the police would charge him at age 12 with making a false report to the police officers.
Well, and that kind of happened here, right? Because Kevin tells the truth. He's willing to take whatever comes his direction. And then there's a little bit of a twist because he gets a visit from an unsavory character that's like, you know what, let's just put all this aside and we'll get you your degree back or your license back.
Your law license back,
and everything's going to be good, but he wouldn't do it.
Well, no. Well, here the point with Kevin and the point with my jury trial is soon after that was over, my administrative assistant said to me, and of course the jury didn't believe that story. It was preposterous, and they found him guilty. As he was testifying, they were turning back in that very jury box, looking at me like, do something about this guy's lying. But what came out of that is my assistant at that point said to me, well, that's a silly story, and no one believes it. It's just fanciful. But there has to be one day someone whose story seems just fantastical, and it's true, and how will you ever know? And see, that's exactly what happens to Kevin, as you just mentioned. In this story, he is a lawyer, and he knows better than anyone. As he goes down this road, no one is going to believe his explanation. No one is going to believe that he's being made the patsy in an insurance scam. And especially no one is going to believe that because he has a prior brush with the law, and once you do that, you're sort of tainted a little bit each and every time you speak to the police, and each and every time you appear in court in terms of the evidentiary sort of impediments that you have.
And you give him a sense of integrity and tenderness, though, also with, rescuing the dog, Nelson.
Is that cheating?
No, I love that.
Is it cheating to make your character likable by having him get a puppy out of a dumpster?
Right. I mean, I love that part, and I love the fact that he was so encouraging to his coworker and helping him, with education, and he was like this cheerleader for people behind the scenes, but still taking his hits.
And not only does he take his hits, he takes his hits because the things that he is doing for people that are genuine and good and bona fide are twisted, and I won't get into a lot of plot, but are twisted and used against him.
And, that was so evident. And the fact that what kept us going, too, you had mentioned earlier about having real names and real locations of places and people in the book so that when we're reading it, I'm like, oh, I know who that is, or I recognize that name, or that is a real law firm, or we could see that happening. And also, the whole idea about, what happens with insurance, and so many people can make that relatable.
Don't get me started with that. That's a really sore subject with me for a number of reasons. One of the things that I do almost in every book is I try to make this region, in particular my county, a character in the book. And this time, one of the characters and one of the real places is Meadows of Dan, the mountain, as we call it. And maybe this is just because I'm old, and maybe it's just because I'm wistful, but Meadows of Dan remains, to me at least, what this community was 25 years ago or 3 decades ago. It is when I was a young man or even a child here, you didn't lock your car door. Everybody knew each other. Everyone was neighborly. There was a real sense of community spirit. I think throughout Southside and certainly in our county, maybe some of that is eroded, but it is not the case in Meadows of Dan. That is a real place, and I hope I did a good job. I've talked to a couple of people up there. I hope I did a good job. I did right by them in giving a bigger picture of this area, and particularly Meadows of Dan, to a national audience. I hope I did. I hope I did right by the points.
Would you be willing to give our viewers a peek inside Substitution Order and read a selection for us?
Happy to. This doesn't need a whole lot of setup, I don't think. Basically, as we have discussed, Kevin Moore is the protagonist in the book. He's a lawyer. He has a number of legal troubles, and as you and I just discussed, his defense is a bit novel. And
unbelievable?
Unbelievable. True, but unbelievable. So he is speaking with his lawyer, Margot, and she is giving him sort of the bad news about his prospects in court. And of course, Kevin knows that going in because he's a lawyer. And it begins, and she says to him, sitting here and listening to you, eyeballing you and weighing your story, I'm inclined to trust you, Kevin. You're very convincing. But in our world, as you know, it's not so much what the truth actually is. It's what a judge or jury will believe that then becomes the truth. Your situation has so many unique twists, and we have no hard evidence whatsoever. I'm not optimistic we could pull it off. Yep, I agree. It's Kevin speaking. How ironic. I'm now on the receiving end of that advice. An elderly man and his wife shamble by our booth, and I pause until they pass. I've always warned clients that the criminal justice system doesn't calibrate well. It's like a 70s model Snapper Comet Moore. You have 3 basic blade settings, and that's it. We can handle fistfights, killings, shootings, knife scrapes, larcenies, heterosexual divorces, boundary line disputes, and drug sales. The same old, same old. But a well-done hustle, as rare and layered as this, will usually overwhelm a creaky contraption built by bewigged rustics who'd never heard of penicillin and would ooh and ah at a light bulb.
I love it. I love it. And I love the title of the book, Substitution Order. And I think our viewers will figure out exactly where that comes from as they read the book. And I open by saying, you know, revenge is sweet, and boy, it certainly is. I did not see the ending coming whatsoever. And I was cheering. I'm not going to say anymore. I was just happy, right, to see what happened. So tell me, what's happening next for you? What's next?
I have a little bit of an idea. Again, you know, it starts with just a little germ of an idea. I will work out the plot in my head, and then as my writing idol Larry Brown said, find some characters, load them up with trouble, and see if we can work them through that.
And that's exactly what you do. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for having us here in your courtroom, but talking about something totally different. I'm glad I'm not just appearing before you as a judge.
Well, thanks to you, Rose. Thanks to Carol, and it was fun. And it's not my courtroom. I'm just a visitor here, and it's fun to sit at this table. I hadn't been here since I was a young lawyer.
Oh, wonderful. Well, special thanks to Martin Clark for sharing the Substitution Order, his life of work right here at the Patrick County Courthouse. If you'd like to check out more of our conversation online, learn more about the book and about Martin, we're going to continue talking about this. So please check us out and tell your friends out about us. I'm Rose Martin, and I hope to see you next time, right around the corner.